So it's now about noon on this Friday, and I would like to welcome everyone to this one-on-one conversation with Sheema Khan. Just so you'll know, the session is being recorded, and we'll send you a follow-up email with a link if you'd like to watch it again or any parts of it again. And I'll be interviewing Sheema about her career and her ideas about practice building, and then we're going to open up for your questions. You might see on the screen Emily Porter, who is our producer, and she's always with us for all our sessions, and she does a lot of other things for Leading Edge. And she's going to be monitoring the chat line. So if you would like to ask some questions, please feel free to write them in the chat line or let Emily know you'd like to come on the screen. I'll be interviewing Sheema for 35 minutes or so, and then we'll give you the opportunity to ask questions and delve into issues. So Sheema Khan brings extensive experience in helping mental health professionals navigate the business side of private practice. And whether you're starting up a practice or looking to grow your practice, hopefully today's conversation will give you some insights that will be useful for you. But first, I'd like to start off with how I met Sheema, because I think it's relevant. Because Sheema came to one of our EMDR trainings last summer. And as is my wont, I went around the room and talked to people just to meet therapists and find out what they're up to, what brought them to our program. And I found out at that time that Sheema had an MBA. And I've been around a lot of workshop rooms, and I very rarely meet therapists going in for clinical training who had an MBA. So I wanted to get to know her a little bit further. We met because, again, that was very interesting to me. So, Sheema, welcome. This is a year later, and welcome to you to this program today.
Thank you so much. It's really lovely to be here, and thank you everybody for joining.
So maybe you could share a little bit about your background and how your experience in the MBA marketing world led you to your approaches in as someone in private practice and helping others in private practice.
Of course. My story is it's different. It's a very unique story, and I will try to make it as short as possible. But I actually spent 20 years. I started when I was five, right? But I spent 20 years in corporate sales and marketing. Like Michael had said, I have an MBA from York University. I did my undergrad in business, it from formerly Ryerson, now TMU. And, business was sort of my passion. I really enjoyed it. I worked for large multinational organizations throughout my career, like Kraft, Hershey, L'Oreal, Ferrero. So a lot of chocolate companies. I spent a great deal of time there managing large teams, doing a lot of sales and marketing, and working with customers specifically as well. And COVID hit, and everyone sort of went virtual. And then I was starting my degree from Yorkville at the time when COVID hit. I didn't know that COVID was going to be a thing in 2020, but I started in January 2020. And it was something that I was just interested in. I had a passion for it. I wasn't sure if it was even going to be a career choice that I was going to stay with. I just wanted to do the degree and see what I thought of it. And when COVID came around, and I ended up being such a mental health advocate for the organizations that I was working for, I realized that, after I've done my degree, that I was sort of done with the corporate world. My mom had an illness, and she was hospitalized for months on end, and I realized that I couldn't juggle the demands of a corporate life anymore. So I quit my corporate job and I started my private practice. It allowed me to sort of delve in a small way initially, just taking a few clients. But I love the flexibility that it offers me and the ability to make my own hours so I can really pour into the people that need me, and that is my family. And that's why I wanted to help other therapists, because I think that there's a way to make a values-based practice that fits into your life. And that's where my passion sort of came to as well.
Well, thank you for that. Now, I know you're in a number of different networks of private practice therapists, and I'm wondering in these last few years what some of the key shifts you've seen and how therapists approach their private practice. What's been changing?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of therapists are learning the ropes of the business. I think there's such amazing clinicians out there, and we learn such amazing skills in our undergrads, in our undergrads and our master's programs and whatnot. But being a business owner is a different ball game altogether. And I've come across so many people who don't have the business background but are doing phenomenal work. And I'm noticing that it's just not one-on-one client time. This workshop that we're talking about, like it is really focused on people that they don't have to grow a big group practice, but they can basically expand their practice to what makes them happy. And some of the shifts that I'm seeing are group workshops, digital products being sold based on something that the therapist is really good at. If they're very good with coaching, ADHD clients or parenting, they might do parenting one-on-one skills. So they're really taking their skills, the knowledge, and monetizing that in a way that is meaningful for the general public.
Now, I know, having been a clinician myself and gone to social work school, that when people enter to become a counselor or therapist, they don't think they're entering the business world. They think they're a people person. And now, many people are going and hoping to build a sustainable private practice where they really have been trained. Certainly, in social work school, no one talked about starting a private practice. And in my day, maybe that's changed. But what are some of the misconceptions do you think therapists have about building a practice, and what's the reality behind that?
Well, I would say one of the biggest is that being a good therapist is good enough to have a full practice. It's not. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. You can be an amazing therapist, but if you're not able to market yourself or reach the target market that you're trying to get to, and I call it target market because I come from marketing. I mean ideal client, essentially, is what I mean. But it's simply not true. Like clinical skills essential, of course, and it is a foundation to the services that we offer. But if no one knows you exist, or if your systems are burning you out, there's no efficiency in your systems, then that skill can't really reach the people who need it. And you're spending a lot of time doing a lot of, make busy work, versus having a more streamlined version of what you're trying to do. And that's the thing that this workshop talks about is another misconception is that marketing feels salesy or inauthentic, and it doesn't have to when done well. It's just storytelling. It's sharing who you are authentically, what you offer, and how you can help. And that's not manipulation, it's connection. So I've seen a lot of, conversations. I'm in a lot of Facebook groups and whatnot around, the unethicalness of marketing and whatnot. But I think that there's a really, really unique and authentic way in which you can market yourself.
You just mentioned the idea of the ideal client. What does that have to do with developing a private practice? What do you mean by that?
Well, I'm gonna relate it back to like a consumer brand, okay? Just to make it a little bit easier. So, I mean, I'm sure everybody on this call has probably bought, a Reese's Pieces box of chocolates or a Reese, right? The thing is, we're all different ages, genders, all of that stuff. So the thing is, we can all go and look for the Reese's Pieces and buy it. But the company Hershey, they have a target audience on who they're trying to reach with that particular product. So all of their marketing efforts and whatnot are for that particular product. Doesn't mean that you're not going to service other people that might come to you. No, but your marketing efforts have to be more focused because you can't cast such a wide net and reach everybody, right? You may get people that are not in your core target that you can still service and be an amazing therapist to, but your messaging has to be a little bit more focused and clear. So that's what I mean by ideal client.
How do you find these? Well, once you realize the ideal client, what are the best avenues to reach those ideal clients?
Well, it depends on who they are, right? If you know your niche, you want to be clear on where they're going and how they're looking for it. A big part of the workshop that I do is understanding the need recognition, the process that a person who you're trying to reach would go to get therapy. Just as an example, because of my corporate background, I worked with a lot of people in stress and burnout, a lot of entrepreneurs trying to, shift their mindsets and whatnot. So I've done a lot of partnerships with organizations and their mental health departments, and working with them, because that is the type of client that I would love to be working with. So building the right partnerships is really key to know where these people will be going to get support.
I would imagine people watching this and people I've spoken to before said, I've tried marketing. They put an ad in Psychology Today, which I know has been for some people, it's very successful, maybe less successful now. And they say, but nothing seems to work. I pass out my cards, Psychology Today, I talk to all potential referring sources. What do you think the first three things that therapists should do to build up their practice?
So I think that you have to know, like I said, know your niche, be crystal clear on who you want to help, right? Clarify the message that you want to put out there, and then choose a couple of channels, right? Not being everywhere. Like, I think a lot of therapists are feeling the pressure of like, oh, do I have to like start dancing on TikTok and doing reels on Instagram? It's like not necessarily if that's not where your target market is going. If you talk to young adults, you probably do have to be on those channels. So being real, if once you know who you're targeting and who you would like to support and help, or who lights you up, that's you want to make sure that you're being selective in choosing that. Some of the marketing channels are table stakes, like Psychology Today. It's like, it's best practice to be on there, just because that seems to be like the most portal used for therapists, but it is overcrowded, right? So even standing out on there can become a challenge. So having more personalized way of reaching your ideal client is more important.
Again, you're talking about the whole maybe some discomfort with people selling their services and they want to be authentic. Talk more about how you reframe the mindset, like that really aligns with people's values as well as acknowledges the fact they're in a business.
Yeah, so I do want to point out that this is not just a therapist problem, it's kind of a gendered problem, right?
Yeah.
I'm looking on the screen here, and there's a lot of women on the screen, right? I come from corporate, and I spent 20 years there, like I had said, and they're women who don't ask for their promotions and what they deserve and all of this type of stuff. And so just let's look at the statistics for a second. 75 to 80% of therapists are women, depending on the specific mental health profession and region, there's a little bit of a breakdown. So psychologists, US and Canada, 70 to 80%, social workers, 83 to 85%. So there's an element of gendered, of not being able to ask for what you want. And then obviously just the nature of the work that we do. Almost feeling shamed for making money on someone on helping somebody's mental health, right? Often. So the discomfort is very common and it's valid. Therapists often enter this field from a place of service, not sales. But the reframe is that you're not selling you. You're offering a solution to someone's pain. Someone needs your support. We didn't make the system the way that it is. Unfortunately, again, I won't, I'm not gonna go into a big political discussion about healthcare and whatnot, but the system is the way that it is, and private practice is a solution to a fairly uh what I don't want to say broken, a fairly, you know, overused system essentially, right? So you are offering a solution to someone's pain, and you are offering, some people offer all sorts of ways to help them, right? So when you show up clearly, confidently, authentically, you're helping people who already are looking for the support that you're not going out and asking them to come get therapy. You're only showing up in places where they're looking to get the support that they need, right? I also remind therapists that charging appropriately isn't greed, it's sustainability. When your practice is resourced, you're able to offer more pro bono work, sliding scale options, or even create free content that reaches more people, right? So selling with integrity means, standing in your value and not exploiting others. And that would be the reframe that I would really hope that you could take away from this.
So you're helping people in their marketing efforts. So how do they determine if the marketing efforts are working or not? What are the ways? And I think you use technology in very interesting ways, but how do they know, yes, this is working or not working? How do they make good judgments?
Well, I mean, a big part of the last part of the workshop is called KPI and insight management. So understanding your metrics are really important. It's not just about the income that you're making. It's like the conversion rate. It's understanding if the right people are landing in your inbox. And if they're not converting, it's not because you haven't done a good job in your consult. It's probably because you're not the right fit. So how did that person come? I look at my conversion rates across. I work at a couple of different clinics. I have my own private practice, and I work at a couple of other private practices as well. And I look at my conversion rates and see how that client landed in there. If it wasn't a referral, if it wasn't through my own marketing efforts, I likely won't have a high conversion rate. So that's one thing. Obviously, depending on the type of marketing that you're doing, whether it's search or social media or whatever it is, there's a lot of metrics that are available and dashboards that are available on that regard as well. But honestly, income, number of average hours being worked, your conversion rates, your retention rates with your clients, those are things to be thinking about. And knowing that you have the successful marketing to reach the clients that you would like to be working with.
Um, I wonder if you can share like a short success story where a small business or a therapist tweaked their brand and grew their client base. And it could be your story or someone else's story that will inspire people to say, yes, learning about how to do this is really going to help.
Sure. So I mean, I can definitely share from my own perspective. I do have an example from another therapist perspective, but I can share my own example as well. When I started narrowed down that I wanted to work with, burnout and stress management and corporate clients and whatnot, I knew that that was a real core niche for me, and I started creating partnerships with organizations. I had the opportunity to do a big mental health workshop with an organization, but I went and sought them out because I knew that these partnerships would be important to me. And that sort of generated a lot of leads. So I took a different approach in terms of how I sought out the ideal client. But one other thing that I can share is, one therapist I worked with had incredible training experience, but her website and profile were filled with very generic language. One thing I say, and you probably hear this in every single, business for therapists, is like, don't put all your credentials and like, oh, this certified and that certified. Clients don't know the difference. Right. So it's very, very important to speak in very generic, in language that is more focused on their pain points. So nothing spoke to the heart of what she offered. We spent a few hours refining her niche, reworking her About Me section, and creating messaging that spoke directly to her ideal clients, women navigating high functioning anxiety in corporate spaces. So within a month, she kind of doubled her inquiries because her message was finally speaking to someone versus having very generic language, very clinical language. So speaking like you would, not like a therapist, but speaking like a person. I think that was really helpful.
Yeah, yeah. So, and your workshop covers how to define and communicate your value. And what are some of the common mistakes that therapists make in this area? And how would your workshop help address that?
Yeah, so the value piece I think is really important. It's like because we're so proud of the trainings that we take. And again, myself too, and some clients are looking for specific trainings. I do want to highlight that. So if that's part of your niche, highlight that. That's totally fine. But I would say that focusing the value statement, and we do a value statement together on basically the pain point that you are trying to solve for versus, I am an EMDR, DBT, ACT certified therapist. Because to the client, that's like, what does that even mean? Right. So, really focusing on the value that you provide, the pain points that they have is very important. And I kind of give a formula for what that looks like. And to be honest, I use a lot of AI. And I know that that's a dirty word sometimes in the therapy world, but it can be a really good assistant in helping you decide how to position yourself as well. So, and I provide a little bit of prompts and stuff around that too.
Actually, you mentioned AI, and it's something I've been starting to use as well. And I'd be very curious in terms of people out there watching this program about your use of AI. So, what do you find most helpful in the use of AI? And are there things you worry about in terms of using AI?
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely things that I worry about from a therapeutic standpoint. I do wanna make sure that a concern that's addressed when we talk about. But from a business perspective, I find it to be my best resource. And I have to say that not because it's creating fake content that doesn't align with what I want. It just helps me, a person who maybe is not a wordsmith or not able to get all of my ideas across, to get them done in a more specific way. It's become a little bit of a an administrative assistant. So just to be completely transparent with you guys, I don't have a group practice, and I'm not sure if I'm going to go into group practice. My focus is really around expanding my skills outside of one-on-one therapy. That's how I would like to grow. And everyone's going to be different. Not everybody wants to do a group practice, and that's not the only way that you have to grow. At this point in time, it's not aligned to me. So when you are a resource, you don't have a lot of resources, AI becomes a really good administrative tool on sort of helping you. Sometimes I'll put my metrics in there and say, okay, these are the metrics. This is my conversion. This is my, retention. I saw 86 clients this week and, 43 came back. What can you help me here? And AI will help you sort of analyze your metrics in a little bit more of a meaningful way. It doesn't share any client data, it doesn't share anything personal about the client. It's really all about your business. And then when you talk about sort of things that we worry about, well, I mean, AI, I think every industry is somewhat worried about AI in general, but for therapists specifically, I think a lot of clients are who can't afford it, who can't afford therapy, they are, really leaning in to AI and asking AI to help them and provide them with questions, I mean, answers to some of their problems. And the young clients, like the younger clients that I have that do that, I help embrace that with them because I use it in between sessions. I mean, I definitely put a disclaimer on, you've got to be very careful about what it's spitting out for you. Let's talk about the prompts you gave it. Let's talk about what came up from there. And we sort of build some connection around it. I don't shun them for using it or make them feel bad because that was helpful for them in the moment, and I have to meet them where they are. So I think that there is a way to embrace it in an ethical manner. I think that there's a lot of ways that, and again, our industry has a number of tools that are HIPAA or PHIPAA compliant that allow us to get consent from clients to record sessions and provide a notes that they can take home with them as well. But that's coming. I know it's not fully integrated, and that's not something I'm using AI for, but I use it mostly for my business specific practices.
But you see that coming in the future. I know
I do.
doctors talking about no
Yep.
longer having to sit in front of a laptop and record medical interviews, and they're getting all the notes with suggestions. Is that starting to happen? And do you
Yeah.
talk to people who are recording sessions and then getting notes out of that and all that? Are you finding
Yeah.
that?
I am. I actually am part of it's called a AI Clinicians Club. It is an American. So obviously some of the protocols are a little bit different and whatnot. It's called AI Clinicians Club, and she is fantastic. Her name is Kim Tolson. She does the traveling therapist, and she puts forward some ideas on which tools are helpful. Berries is one. It's HIPAA compliant, not PHIPAA, but there are a number of Canadian ones that are coming out. I can't think of a specific name at this time, but I have spoken to some that who are using it. My own intern, her therapist, uses it, and she said that it was really helpful to get a full note from her on kind of explaining and how accurate it felt for her as well. So she felt like it was a great tool, but some clients still won't want you to be using it, and it's all consent based. But I do think that that's something that is going to be used more. I also think it's important that, people say, well, AI is going to take over our jobs, and it's not AI that's going to take over your jobs. It's people that know how to use AI that are going to take over our jobs. So we want to make sure that we're on the front cusp of understanding at least what value it can offer us.
Yeah, I'm wondering if, you see in the future the ways that therapy bots might be able to assist therapists. It's very scary to say this because I don't, therapists don't want to be put out of business, and I don't think they ever will because there's nothing like personal connection between people. But from what I understand, and an experience I had recently in asking uh, AI for some information about something, they ended up being very complimentary. It was almost like having a good friend who understood me. And I wasn't asking for that. I was just asking information. And then they became very personal and complimentary about what a nice thing I was doing. Do you
Yeah.
see in the future therapy bots might even, for certain kinds of problems, be able to assist therapists, or what?
Yeah, and they're already doing that, right? So, some of these programs they allow you to, like I said, just not just notes, but to do treatment planning. The thing is, we still have to do the work, right? So, like AI can spit out like this is a great tool to use for treatment planning, but clients aren't going to go and say spit out a CBT plan for me, and I'm going to follow every single thing. I'll leverage it in a way where I'll say the presenting issue is X, and I have an EMDR, chat GPT that I leverage, and it just helps me with prompts and questions to be focusing on. But again, no identifiable client information is included in that. It's just a presenting issue. And I think that it'll be really helpful in that case for therapists specifically as well. It doesn't make our job lazier. It just makes the information at our fingertips a little bit quicker. And I still think there's a lot of discernment, because one thing about AI, specifically ChatGPT, is that they never say that they don't have the answer. Like ChatGPT never says, "Oh, I don't know." Like they spit out an answer and either which way. So as therapists, we have a lot of discernment to do and to make sure that the information that is being provided to us makes sense within our clinical knowledge and whatnot. But we still have to do the work with the client. We still have to have these conversations and have that connection with the client in order to push out this treatment plan specifically. So I wouldn't be afraid of it. I would figure out a way to embrace it in a way that feels ethical and comfortable and doesn't put the client in any risk, or there's no, lack of consent or anything that comes from that as well.
Okay, I want to go back to the whole business of private practice
Hmm.
business, and some therapists talk about inconsistent referral streams. They're looking various ways. What are some of the strategies you're going to be teaching to help people build a more reliable flow of clients?
Yeah, so again, I think warm refers are really, really important. I have an intern working with me as well, and I say this to a lot of the practicum students that come my way, as I say, of course, as a site, it's my responsibility to provide you with referrals and to get you clients. But at the same time, it's people will not refer people to you if they don't know you. So, making sure that you have a good referral network of clinicians that you work with. Like, I've gotten so many great referrals from people that I know personally because they know me, they know my style, they've seen me in group supervision, they've seen my approach, and they know right away that, okay, this person is going to be a good fit for this particular client. So that's number one. Just having that warm referral. Passive referrals are kind of the more online directories and the SEO optimized platforms that work even when you're off the clock, like your search. If you have a website, investing in a search strategy, search, and this I've learned, I did a lot of digital work when I was in corporate, and search is your number one ROI tool, because people are actually looking for the thing that you're offering. So you want to be there when they go to look for it, right? Because they're actually putting in help with this, and you want to show up there. So understanding your search terms, and I don't go into a ton of detail. I just do want to be transparent in my workshop, just because it's a very specialized field, and I always suggest having, if it's affordable, having someone whose literally a job is search, because some people that is the only thing that they do. We had agencies that did that for us specifically, but generally there's a lot of therapists, search experts that exist. You can also use ChatGPT to understand which search words to bid on. They would be able to provide you with a good amount of information there as well. So basically, search is another one, and then community is the other one. I've created a lot of community connections, going after organizations that are helping women get back into the workplace. So that's the niche that I want to go into. So because I have an intern, I've offered some additional resources for them to be able to come and get, pro bono or a really low cost therapy if you're able to do that. or do a workshop for specific community events as well. So these are all sort of some ways to go after getting different types of referrals.
So it sounds like there are these various streams, the warm ones, the online ones, the making connections and community. So I wonder, um, you do a lot of work, and how what portion of your time in a week or in a month would be building these various streams versus the time you spent with clients providing your therapy?
Yeah, and I think that is the hard part, right? Because every single time, and this is anxiety inducing, I have to say, coming from corporate and sort of having a 9 to 5 job, and if I decided to take an extra long lunch break, I would get paid for it, right? This is the hard part about time for money, right? But I'm very what's the word? Protective of my time in the sense that I do book off breaks to work on this specifically. So I would say, I take Friday afternoons off therapy specifically, and I spend, 3 or 4 hours doing sort of work for my business, right? Not everybody has the ability to do that, and I do recommend that if you're going to take some time, you have to focus it and not do it between sessions where you feel frantic, because we all know that we need breaks between sessions. We need to do something kind for ourselves. We need to go outside. We need to drink water. We need to go to the washroom. So I wouldn't recommend doing it in between that. But if you do have some off days where you're just like, you know what, I'm going to spend the afternoon, like 2, 3 hours focusing on this, keep creating more focused time. And it might not be every week. You might have quarters where you're like, okay, this is what I'm going to be focusing on. Every 2, 3 months is going to be where I do a deep dive into my business and go from there. So it depends on your style. It depends on your schedule and your ability. But we're not seeing clients 100% of the time. So this stuff is important and it requires a little bit of attention. And it's not just something that happens. It's something that you have to make time for. Yeah.
Okay. I have one more question, and then we can open it up to anyone out there who would like to ask a question. And again, you can put your questions in the chat box, and Emily will be keeping an eye on that, and she can ask the question. Or you can just say to Emily in the chat box, I'd like to come on screen, or we'll also just give you the opportunity to come on screen when we're at that portion. So your 4 sessions are going to deal with business skills, laying foundations, marketing, attracting your ideal clients, how you measure success, and sustaining growth in your practice. And I'm wondering how your workshop will support implementation and long-term goal
Yeah.
change. How are you going to be able to do that?
So with each workshop, and as we talked about the workshop, it was really important that it wasn't on one because each builds on the other, right? So as you had said, week one is around setting the vision and the foundation. We take time to actually set that. If we don't set that in the beginning, then all the other 3 elements of the workshop that are there, it's going to be hard to execute on, right? So each workshop we end with, a takeaway, an action item that we're going to be building on, right? So the first one is setting the vision, the foundation. We do a big, everyone here who knows ACT. I'm a big fan of the values exercise. Has everyone heard of the values? If you can put your hand up and say yes. The values exercise is the one that I feel like is a really important for new entrepreneurs and therapists in general. And then in week two, what we'll do is we'll spend some time understanding your demographics, geographics, kind of all of the demographics around your core client, and really laying it out for yourself and who lights you up to work with, right? And then we do a 4P strategy. So we look at what your offers are, where you are showing up in your practice, what your pricing looks like. We'll do a deep dive in all of that. And then the last piece is measuring success. And I have a tracking tool that I leverage, which would be available for sale after. But that will be something but talking about which metrics are the most important to look at and whatnot. So each workshop builds on its own, and you walk away with something for every workshop, for all 4.
Okay, great. Well, let's open it up. I noticed there's some questions. Emily,
Hmm.
over to you in terms of questions and
Thank
everything
you.
else.
So the first question is about the amount of therapists out there, and do you think that the market is oversaturated? Has the economy made others' private practices slower lately?
Yeah. I mean, I can't speak with complete authority that that's the truth, but I'm feeling it myself. The private practices that I'm in are also feeling it as well. I do think that every single therapist has something unique to offer, and they can find their niche appropriately. But you're absolutely right. There are a lot of therapists, and it's a very different world than it was 5 years ago in terms of who's out there. But even kind of coming into this space. I'm going to be very honest with you. When I started in 2023, I left my full-time job. I was seeing like 7 clients a week, and I was like, "Oh, this is going to be like I'm in trouble." Um, but even as an oversaturated market, I'm now at like at least 23 to 24 clients a week, right? And again, it took some time to build, for like 3 years to build, but I just found out who I want to work with and who wants to work with me. So I do think that there's a space and time for everything, but I also think that extending past one-on-one sessions is also an option, right? It's like what can you offer? Are there workshops? Are there group dynamics that you can work? And what is your value? I think that's the most important thing is understanding how you stand out in the sea of therapists that are out there, and that's what the workshop lets us do. But I do agree. I think that there are a lot of therapists, and it's a very different world than it was 5 years ago, for sure.
Thank you. So some therapists have concerns about the ethics behind AI development, particularly given that so much of it is driven by large companies with their own agendas. How would you respond to those who worry about using AI tools, even for something like business growth or administration, um, that may be contributing to a system that feels fundamentally unethical or untrustworthy?
I mean, again, I think that everyone has to operate within what feels unethical and what feels ethical to them. I'm going to be honest with you. I think that, and I'm probably going to say something that's a little controversial. I think that sometimes we over analyze ethical and non-ethical without really thinking about what we're doing. When you're using it for business, you're not sharing any personal details about any client. You're talking about how do I build a search strategy? How do I like I can't see the lack of ethics, and I would love to have a conversation with somebody who would like to share that with me. But I can't see the lack of ethics in getting someone else to help you write your emails if you don't have time for it. I personally don't see it. I do think that there is a fine line when it comes to client work, for sure, absolutely for sure. And that's why I tread very lightly with that. Personally, I don't feel very comfortable utilizing it in a massive therapeutic way unless I know that there's something that's PHIPAA compliant or that it's sanctioned by the mental health, field in some way. But I think you have to lean into your own intuition around what feels good and what doesn't feel good. And some people won't use AI, and that's completely okay. I use it for my business. I don't feel like it's creating an issue for any of my client work.
Thank you. So another question asks, in February, I noticed for the first time in years a dip in referrals. Normally, I experience a dip in the summer months. Any idea of why? I have a good referral group, normally get referrals from them and word of mouth as well as Psychology Today.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't tell you unless I spoke to you personally and whatnot. But I mean, again, I've noticed that there have been, just because I have an intern, I was even trying to get people to get free therapy or low cost therapy was a challenge. So I definitely noticed the same thing in some cases. But I've been able to supplement my income with other things, and I know I'm aware of that. So I find that I'm more open to supplementing my income when I know there's going to be dips, and that's helpful for me. But being prepared for that is really important, and knowing that that's kind of the reality of our field in some cases. But I mean, I would want to know specifically, where the referral systems are, how you're speaking to your clients. Is there not ever any opportunity to get further referrals? I feel like I'd have to know from a personal perspective on that person's question specifically. But just to validate, there has been a slowdown in this last year for sure, and I'm noticing it as well.
Thank you. How is private practice different from registering a business, for example, or registering a practice, for example, as a business? And what are the pros and cons of each approach? And then there's a separate question after that.
Sorry, so Private practice is kind of registering a business. So does anyone want to pop on for more clarity, just so I know what the question is specifically? Is it incorporating? Is that what you mean?
Let me get some clarification on
Okay.
that. And while we are waiting for that
Yeah.
clarification, where did it go? There was another question. Um, if I'm creating a profile on psychology today, what steps should I take to ensure I'm complying with CRPO policies?
So I love CRPO so much. They're so vague in what their policies are around marketing. It's very clear, and I do share this in my workshop. As long as you're not saying I'm the best or I'm going to solve this problem for you, like you are going to feel better as soon as you leave this session. Those are the things you're not making promises that are not that you can't guarantee. That's what CRPO has identified as being misleading. Like even in terms of your title, like best therapy services, like you can't use that type of language. But saying what you want, what you do to help clients, there's not a lack of compliance there. Right. If you're ever worried and you want to check with the CRPO, you can always email them and say, does this feel okay? They'll email you back and they'll tell you probably nothing. Just letting you know, because I've emailed them on numerous occasions on certain things. But generally, as long as you're not promising a an outcome that you don't have any control over, is sort of the line that I use. I never say you will feel better, when you do this. It's more like this is what I want to help you with. If you're feeling a certain way, I have approaches that help in this, because that's all true. And you do have those approaches. But you're not promising that they're gonna immediately feel better.
Thank you. We did have a comment about the tremendous damaging impacts on the environment with AI usage as well,
Yeah.
and how some clients are even coming in with this climate change concern or climate anxiety.
Yep.
How
Yep.
can therapists benefit or balance the benefit of AI with its environmental aspects, especially as climate change is becoming a growing concern for many clients?
100%. I mean, the thing is, you have to, and this is the thing, is like when we do the values exercise and whatnot, if that's a value for you, don't use it. That's it's as simple as that. Not everyone's going to have the same value system, and I'm being very, very honest, right? Of course, there's people that care about it more than others. Like just like racism and systemic racism that we all sort of contribute to in some way, right? Like you have to decide what is in your value system, and you have to incorporate that in your practice, and that means that that's guiding the decisions that you make. So if you decide not to use it, that's okay. But you have to also know that other people will.
Thank you. Um, sorry. How do you connect with potential referrers who are too busy? For example, by letter, email.
So meaning like doctors or like s- what
Yes,
type of referrers? Yeah.
yes, like GPs who are really too busy likely to meet. Do I
Yeah.
send the old way by letter
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
or
You
by
know what?
email?
So, me and Michael met in person, right? So just having like if you're able to get in and have a conversation with their receptionist or leave information there. And you know what? Every interaction's not going to result in you getting in there. And that's the honest truth, is focusing on the referrals that actually make sense. If it makes sense for your niche to go to doctors, then there's a little bit more effort that's needed there. In my niche, it doesn't make sense to go to a practitioner, so I don't waste my time with referral systems that won't help me meet my target. I think we're told that certain referral systems are needed, but it depends. Like if there's some very specific, like you work with bipolar or you work with folks who are managing meds with a doctor, then obviously that referral system is more valuable to you. But I think really assessing whether or not the referral system that you're trying to connect with actually adds value to the niche that you're trying to meet is really, really important. So I'd have to have a kind of a personal conversation to understand, well, who are you trying to target? And are those clinicians the most efficient way to target them? Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you. Um, I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat right now.
Well, maybe I'll
Michael.
ask a question, and other people can, everyone can think about if there's something more you'd like to ask Sheema before we end. We're in the business of continuing education, and for years we've offered lots of different programs and lots of different approaches. I'm happy that we're doing this on business development because it's an area that's a leading edge idea of helping people learn something they might not have uh, experience or training in. But there are many different therapeutic approaches, and I know I met you at the MDR program. Uh, what difference does it make for therapists to have a range of therapeutic approaches? And are there therapeutic approaches these days that you think will attract more clients to someone's private practice? Is there something they should get training in that's more beneficial? And are there approaches to therapy that, from what you know and talking to people, are less attractive into helping people build their practices?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think that's also so personalized in some ways. But to your point, I think that any therapist that has a trauma-informed lens it's really important. So regardless of the modality that you look at, like I did EMDR, I found it to be really, really supportive and helpful because you do get clients that don't want to do a heck of a lot of talking and they want to process a specific event and whatnot. IFS is another model that I think is really helpful from a trauma-informed approach. Polyvagal is another one. So I think having an understanding of the nervous system and how things work in our bodies is a really, really important lens to come from specifically. And while I personally used CBT and DBT a lot in the beginning of my practice, I'm using it less and less, and it just happens to be the client base that I'm seeing maybe. But I find in some cases, especially with neurodivergent and CBT can be a little bit not neurodivergent affirming. So, while it's evidence-based and there's a lot of useful tools that come out of CBT, I'm finding I'm using it less and less because I do work with racialized women as well. And sometimes that gaslighting yourself into thinking something is okay and that your beliefs are irrational, it can be really damaging in some ways. So I think that we have to utilize modalities and approaches that are supportive to our clients as well.
Thank you.
Over to you,
We
Emily.
did have
I
a
think we
couple. Yeah, we have a couple more questions.
Mhm.
So let's start with, can you expand or can you discuss when or whether or not you should incorporate your practice or not?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And if I'm being completely honest with you, I'm not incorporated. I'm a sole proprietor at this point in time. And I don't know if I plan on becoming incorporated. I think that is a conversation that you need to have with your lawyer and your accountant. And the reason I say that is because your financial goals depend on whether or not you incorporate or you don't. I personally need every penny and income and to be into my personal life. So that's why I've decided not to incorporate at this point in time. I'm not comfortable with but there's basically tax deferrals and tax savings that exist with corporations as well. So it really depends on your own financial goals and your liability as well. So so I have an intern working with me right now. She wants to become an IC with me. And as I have more ICs working with me, I'm probably going to want to have a little bit more protection for my brand and my business because now I'm not the only person representing my brand, right? So that's the indication that I have. Everyone tells you a different answer though. Some people incorporate very early. They want that extra protection of liability very early on. And some people don't. I feel like my insurance liability with my practice, like our therapy liability, it was enough to protect me as a sole proprietor. But as I'm building and I'm having more people represent my brand, I feel like that is an indicator to me that I might be ready to incorporate. There are financial implications as well with the CRPO. Right now as an RP, we're renewing about $700, and I was like shocked. But as if you are incorporating, it's over $1,000, so that's something to consider. There's also they have a little bit of uh they have a say in what type of company or name you have as well. So you want to make sure that you're looking into that for the CRPO. But that is a very personal decision. You don't have to incorporate ever if you don't want to. It just depends on your own financial goals and the amount of liability you're willing to take on as a private practice owner.
Thank you. And we do have 2 rapid fire questions about your upcoming training in July.
Yeah.
So the first is, will your program help to decide if my niche is too narrow?
Yep.
Okay. And will your workshop be talking about choosing a software to manage the practice?
So not specifically, but I can talk about my own experience. I've used both Owl and Jane. I haven't used any of the other software, so I can't speak intelligently to Simple Practice or some of the other ones. I chose Jane specifically because it's Canadian, and I'm happy with it. I love it. So it would just depend on, understanding and doing a good deep dive in what you need your practice to do. But most practice software have full EHR capabilities and invoicing and whatnot. But that's a question that you can definitely bring up, and I can share my own experience about that for sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, to close, I really want to thank you, Sheema. I've learned a lot from you and already in our time together about all kinds of metrics and logistics and things I certainly wasn't trained in. And very few therapists are trained in business practices. So I would hope that this session would encourage you either to take our course or just to pursue lots of information about stuff that's really important if you are now a business person. And if you're in private practice, you are a business person, whether that was ever your goal or not. Emily, I just want to ask if there are any last minute questions you have before we wrap up.
Are there any websites besides Psychology Today that I should be on, as it seems to be becoming saturated?
Yeah, I said that I'm on a referral of first session as well, and I'm sort of playing around with a couple of different referral groups that haven't been quite successful for me either. But you're absolutely right. There's not a lot out there, and my goal before the workshop is to actually try and find more that I can share with you as well.
Thank you.
So thank you all for joining us today. I hope it's been helpful and interesting. I appreciate the questions. Emily, thank you very much. And one more time, thank you very much, Sheema.
Thank you so much, Sheema.
Thank you. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Take care, everyone.